Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Airport Advisory Committee meeting. This is November 18th, 2019. First, we'll call to order, and I believe we have to do the approval of the minutes.
First we have public comment.
Or okay, so we'll have the public comment, and if I just give the instructions here. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action, and each person has up to 5 minutes to speak on a specific item. Well, I believe that's for if there's an action item, and so if I'm not mistaken, so there's no action item. Do we really have a public comment? Yeah. I mean, there's no action item, so there really is, and there's no.
There's possible action items, but I think that's.
Oh, for possible action approval of the minutes for the May. Oh, okay. So go ahead and we'll open it up for the possible action items approval of the minutes.
So you have to take the first public comment before you even begin.
Yes.
Oh,
Did you already
okay.
call for public comment?
I think the first public comment, they talk about whatever they want.
No, the first public comment is limited to the agenda.
To the agenda items.
Okay.
Okay, and the limits are for 5 minutes, so if you.
And is on any subject. Got it.
Okay, so if you, anybody for public comment?
Well, this is Rob Martin, and obviously I've been involved in the airport for many years. The strange thing to me is I know that there were 2 or 3 things we wanted on this agenda to discuss, and I think we can at the end on the other public comment, but they should have been on the agenda to begin with. Okay, one is the fuel farm is all messed up still, and it's been over 2 years. Okay. And that is not acceptable to have one pump that works. I got stuck there for 10 minutes the other day again because you can't get gas. Because if there's one plane there, that guy I think had 5 tanks to fill up. And I helped him out, but you know, there should never just be one. The little other airports I go to, they all have 2 or 3 ones. Terrible herps would never allow just to be one tank, and it's been almost 2 years now since there have been 2 that work. That's one thing. The second thing is the renewal of the ground leases, and I don't know whether we should talk about that now or in the future, but obviously I've been probably more involved in that than any single person, and I really need a few minutes to walk through both new staff, because I think Willie's trying to do a good job, but he doesn't understand the history. And
I think your chance for that will be at the end.
okay. Okay.
Anyone else? No one? All right, so we close public comment. So approval for the agenda is for possible action, approval of the minutes of the May 7th, 2019 AAC meeting.
I move to approve those minutes.
I second that. So it's approved?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so number 2 is for possible action, review and discuss the 2020 AAC meeting dates and receive introduction from the airport manager. So I believe that's you, Mr. Williams.
You'll need to take a vote on the minutes.
We did?
We did. Yeah,
It's on. I need to move closer to it.
Okay, as I mentioned before, is for item 2 is for possible action, review and discuss the 2020 AAC meeting dates and receive introduction from the airport manager.
Okay, those are 2 separate items. For possible action, review and discuss the 2020 AAC meeting dates. So if we would like to schedule the meetings the same way we did this year, each quarter, but the second month of the quarter, that works pretty well, and we miss the holidays. That'll be the first Tuesday of that month. And there's a calendar in your packet.
So you're talking first Tuesday of February, of June, and of October? Is that how okay. Indeed,
So
yes,
it'll be
you're right.
February, May, August, and November.
Kurt?
Nope, I move to accept those dates.
I second that.
Okay, motion carries. So it's just for clarification, we got the, what was the dates?
February 4th,
All right,
May 5th,
and May 5th,
August 4th,
August 4th,
November 3rd.
November 3rd, all right. And so we go to item, this is back to 3. I receive introduction from the airport manager.
Hi, everyone. I'd normally stand up to introduce myself, but I'm Willie Williams. I'm the new airport manager. Delighted to be here. This is going to be a very interesting airport, and it's got a few challenges out there. A little bit about me. I've got 15 years as an airport manager, about 62 years involvement with aviation, and literally all my life. Embry-Riddle, pilot, flight engineer, A&P mechanic, been there, done it. It's all been good. And at this point in my career path, I'm more looking to help airports instead of build anything for myself. I want to build the airports. And this one, I think whenever we get down to item 5, I'll be able to elaborate a little bit more on that. And so, yeah, in the future, I'm planning on having some slightly less formal meetings with the tenants and the businesses on the airport, more like an airport town hall or something like that. I just haven't found a really good location to do that yet. So I'll be looking into that, and I'll be notifying everybody when that's going to happen, hopefully sooner than later. So yeah, there you have it. That's me, and I'll talk to you again on item 5.
All right, thank you. And so we move to item 4, and it's the review of the resolution of the airport advisory committee. And this is, when I first started here almost 6 months ago, I was actually quite surprised, meaning that I was here and I was expecting that there was various subjects. In fact, I thought that there was actually no limits that we could actually address. And what I'm quite surprised is how actually limited we are. And if you read these whereas and what we can do, this airport advisory committee seems to be where they're actually attempting, or I shouldn't say they, what I find problematic is that it seems like we're somewhat limited on what we can even talk about. And so if this is, I would actually prefer, and if we can actually get any support, that we actually expand what the Airport Advisory Committee can do and what they can investigate or what they can talk about. I mean, I think that as we all sit around here, and I know the conversation is, why the heck we have the cost that what has gone on at this airport, but yet we're not allowed to talk about it. Well, I am. And I think that we need to address, if we're going to address expenses, because obviously expenses are just as important as income. And when obviously you have limited income, you have to do something about expenses. So I think that is something that we need to talk about, and that we need to address. Now, obviously I can talk about it, but we really cannot pass a resolution and all that because of what the limitations on these. And so obviously we need to have support of the audience to contact their council members and tell them, let's expand the AAC, let's not limit it. So as that goes is, so let's go with the review of the airport. Let's say I believe that is review the resolution for the Airport Advisory Committee, and I believe is that you, Mr. Williams? You?
Well, I just wanted a brief discussion of where we stand with this. I think a quick review of this is important from time to time. Naturally, I just came into this, and so the Aviation Advisory Committee does, in my opinion, allow you to provide advice to me and whatnot on stuff. It does not allow you to make decisions for the airport, but that's pretty standard across the board for advisory committees. The way I'm seeing this is that there are things that you can do. I mean, we don't have we don't have an advisory committee that has identified roles. So we don't have a financial person identified, we don't have a construction person identified, and that type of thing. So it makes it really difficult whenever you have an advisory committee and a resolution to say that, okay, you can, for instance, go and provide expert advice on something whenever you don't say you need expert advice on construction techniques. Well, if you don't have that as a named position at the advisory committee, then you don't really have that expertise. But all that said, what the advisory committee can do is your combined knowledge of stuff. You can say, Willie or whoever's sitting in this seat, we think you need to get expert advice on construction stuff, on financial matters, and that type of thing. And if there's something that's really screwy with the airspace or something like that, you can say, hey, Willie, I think you need to call in the FAA or get some consultant that has the expertise in that goes beyond what we have. So I think you've got a little bit more broad advisory potential in here than what you might think.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Kurt.
If you look at, there's a couple things here that they kind of go along with what you're saying. If you look at item D, where it talks about adoption of the airport master plan, which, as it says here, some of us were involved in that, and we did approve the airport master plan. And there are things in the airport master plan that some of us weren't terribly happy about, but overall, we did approve it. And there are things in there that in that master plan that I think we should follow, and we'll be talking about that at other meetings. But then, of course, in F says the committee may consider, investigate, make findings, and report and recommend on any special matter or question within the scope of its work. And so, that does leave it fairly broad. As Willie says, it's definitely not, there's nothing binding here, but we can make recommendations. And it's not a bad thing. Especially as long as we're working with people who are willing to listen.
Well, that I agree with you, and that is entirely what I want to do is listen and work with people, everyone here.
All right, let's move on to receive, review, BVU fuel sales and fuel deliveries and fuel.
You'll have the airport manager philosophy, number 5. You gotta do that first.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that. Review the airport manager philosophy.
I thought you were going to pass me up there. Come on, man.
I don't want to steal your thunder.
Okay, so I alluded to how much experience I've got in aviation, and I've been around the block quite a bit. There's a few things that just as a general rule that I need to get out there. This is one venue, and like I say, there'll be other venues that I'm going to be saying the same thing probably 1,000 times over. And it's all pretty simple, and I imagine everybody's all heard this stuff before, but I'm the one that really kind of pushes on some of this stuff. Number one, safety's paramount. You know, and that's not just because I don't want anybody to get hurt, which I don't want anybody to get hurt, but if you look at the nature of a small airport nowadays, somebody gets hurt, that has a variety of other things that happen. You know, it starts people pointing fingers, there's political ramifications, financial ramifications possibly, and all this kind of stuff. And so we gotta make sure that we're flying safe, operating on the ground safe, and making sure everybody's paying attention. You know, and I don't care who it is, whether it's the guy working the ramp. You know, if you're an airline pilot, you certainly should understand all this stuff. And if you're just a guy flying a Piper Cub, same thing. So safety's paramount. The other thing is, this is one airport, and only one airport. And everybody gets to share the airport and the airspace. There's no difference between the guy that flies the Piper Cub from a tie down or the guy that's flying, you know, a business jet or whatever. The airspace, everybody shares equally, everybody shares the ground equally, and it has to be that way. It's a shared airport. If it wasn't a shared airport, we'd have two airports, but that's just not the way it is. We have one budget, we have one airport, and we all have to work together. And there's some people have alluded to some friction with, various sections of the airport and whatnot. I plan to work with those individuals and literally everybody out there, businesses, private tenants, doesn't matter. I want everybody to be working on the same level, sharing the space equally. So that I'm pretty serious about. I expect everybody to operate in a professional manner out there. You know, I mean, if you think about it, just getting your pilot's license is a huge educational advantage over lots of people. It's not a college degree, but in some respects it is, because you look at the responsibility that pilots, ground handlers, everybody takes on. You know, that's equal to what many people do in their professional careers. So, you know, we have to look at it professionally. You know, that means talking appropriately on the radio, making sure you're flying the pattern correctly and all that type of thing. And that goes into reporting safety concerns. So since I've been here, there have been 6 safety concerns that have come across my desk, any one of which could have ended up with injuries or deaths. And that's not okay. And the way we fix that is by learning from these things that happen. That's one of the ways. I mean, there's other ways you fix stuff, but one of the important ways is learning from our experiences whenever, you know, somebody flies past you 200 feet away and it scares you. Well, the thing to do is report it. If you have it near midair, naturally you're supposed to report it through the FAA and NASA systems. But if you're not going to do that, at least report it to me so that I know what's going on, so that I can take measures to help correct any potential problems. And I'm not going to bite your head off for telling me something, okay? The other thing is I have an open door policy. I'm pretty much, if I don't have a meeting with someone or something really critical going on, I'm available to meet with tenants, pilots, transient pilots, anybody out there. And that's necessary to make the airport work. I'm not going to sit around and just coke and joke because it's pretty busy down there, but, you know, I do have an open door policy. So if you got a concern, come in and ask me. And that goes into rumors. Airports are defined by rumors. There's all kinds of rumors out there. You hear a rumor and you don't understand it, come and ask me. I'll tell you what I know. I'm not gonna, you know, shade anything. It's our airport. It's everybody's airport. So let's make it work. And so there's the basic philosophy I have. A couple other things I wanted to mention. There's some stuff I want to see at this airport. One of them, and this is going to take a little time while I get everything sorted out, but I want to see a pilot's lounge. You know, we need a place, well, to start off with, we need a place for a transient pilot, flight crew, guy and his wife, whatever, to come in and be able to find a restroom without having to search all through the hangars. And we also need a place for you know, fast team training and that type of thing. So I want to see what we can do with that, and I want to promote some stuff like, you know, I don't even know where an EAA chapter is around here. So why don't we have one here? Okay, so you know, there's stuff like that needs to have a place. We need a flight school. You know, people need to get BFRs, advanced training. It makes the place safer. It gives you something to do. It improves your career field. Just, excuse me, overall. And so flight school would be a really great thing to have out there, as well as a maintenance facility. Right now, there's not much in the way of a maintenance facility for the smaller aircraft. So we need to work on enticing somebody to make that happen too. So anyway, that's my basic philosophy on the airport, where I want to go. There's a variety of other things, you know, that are just all over the place in here. Some controversial things that I'm not going to talk about right now and whatnot. But like I say, if you got questions about stuff, best thing to do is just come and ask me. You know, I'll be straight up with you and tell you what I know. So there you have it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's receive a review of the BVU fuel sales and fuel deliveries and fuel safety.
Matt, you had emailed about this a couple months ago, I believe, and just to give you guys a little bit of information on what we do at the fuel farm, since we've taken over the maintenance and management of it, is that we do daily inspections of all the fuel. When the fuel comes into the airport, we inspect each delivery for the fuel quality. All of us have been trained how to conduct all of the inspections and test the fuel and for quality control and for just fire safety and all of that. So I don't know if you guys have any questions for us. We also we do daily inspections, we do monthly inspections, quarterly. We perform the annual maintenance, do filter changes, change out hoses and things like that when they need to be changed out, when that maintenance item comes due. The Southern Nevada Health District also comes out and inspects our underground storage tanks, makes sure that they're not leaking, looking at all the reporting. They do line tightness. We make sure that we do line tightness tests, and they have additional criteria for monthly and annual walkthroughs that we have to do as well. And the state comes down and checks to ensure the accuracy of our meters at the pump, so you're getting the amount of fuel that it says you're getting.
A couple of questions. First of all, as you remember, the AAC recommended against the city getting into the fuel business and competing against the tenants, but the city decided to do it anyway. And I would like to know if the city's actually making money, A, if that is appropriate to ask, and B, well, let me just ask that question first.
Not a lot, if we do at all. There's a lot of maintenance costs associated with it.
Okay, and then my next question would be, are we, and I realize that beforehand there were problems, there were issues, with it where, I think we've been down to one pump for longer than what the city has we were down to one pump before the city took over, and I realized there were circumstances. But we used to have self-serve Jet A, and now we do not. And I'm wondering if we're going to do anything about that. I want to make sure everybody knows I do not own a jet, but I have a diesel-powered plane that runs on jet fuel, and so now I'm kind of limited on where I can get fuel, and just wondering if that's going to come back, or is that off the table?
No, that's something that we're working on getting fixed.
Okay.
So it's just taken a little bit more time than we thought.
Okay.
Okay, I'm interested, do you log down the problems, the breakdowns? Is that something that you guys log down and everything? Is that something, Willie, that you look at on a monthly basis?
I've been here a month, and I have not looked at it yet.
Okay, but that is a policy or procedure, I guess?
Right. So
Okay.
when we do an inspection, if there is a discrepancy, we note the discrepancy, and we if we can't fix it then we coordinate that to be fixed.
I'm more interested in the pilots that come and, make their complaint, as we just heard, one fuel system down. Is that part of the process, is to write that down and get it to the airport manager so he can review and make suggestions as well?
Okay. This is that particular complaint. I hadn't heard about that before. There was another incident with the same individual that had happened when we were doing another transfer of fuel, and so we work to mitigate those as much as we can.
Okay. All right. And is this, I guess I'm going to basically piggyback off of what Mr. Goodfellow said and everything. Is there, Willie, in your future, as you're starting to make your 30, 60, 90, forecast and look ahead of things that you want to change, can you add to that, or will you add to that a look and see how the city decided to take over the fuel against the AAC's recommendation, what the reasons were, and then go back and base that off of, and did all the hopes and dreams of the city come true?
I'm already looking into that
Okay.
in a pretty detailed fashion, because we're looking at the possibility of doing some modifications to the fuel farm out there and things like that. So I've got to look at how we go through a few things. Where the avgas is actually going to end up is not determined yet, because I'm just investigating it. But it's the avgas. Well, both the underground fuel tanks, the Jet A and the avgas, we have some concerns with. There's no parts that are being manufactured for various equipment within the fuel dispensers. So that's part of the reason why one of them is down, and part of the reason why the Jet A is down too. We've got to fix that, and we've got just a few things that we got to get fixed, and they are slightly above what our capabilities are, in not necessarily turning the wrench part, but in what we're supposed to be able to do.
Okay.
So.
All right, yeah, I just wanted to some type of, checks and balance or review. This is the way that it was decided the city to go. Was that a good move? Was it not? And, future plans go backwards, stay the course.
Right. So, just as a general rule, a couple things. I work closely with everybody. I don't sit in a different office with the door closed. I'm continuously talking to Marissa and Corey and Lisa about a variety of things, but we do talk about the fuel system quite a bit. I do look at the stuff myself personally, and then, at least annually, I'm going to be reviewing everything we've done, because that's just good business strategy, and we have to operate this airport like a business because it's an enterprise fund. So, that's always going to be going on.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Yeah, Willie, I don't mean to divulge, this is not, I don't believe it was in confidence when we had this discussion when we first met, but you had talked about some of the financial planning in the future, and you shared some of your concerns about, future expenses. And, you could stop me right there if that was supposed to remain private, but I didn't think it was just matter of fact speaking. But with that, there's this risk of this fuel farm. This fuel farm could cost a fortune for the airport. And so it's just from my perspective of being in a business for a long time, is that at some point you look at a business, you're thinking, okay, I want to reduce my risk. And that's worth something, that's got to be a value out there in the future. And simply to reduce the risk is worth just setting it aside versus whatever potential earnings you have. And so I just wanted to share that thought with you.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, so I do projections. I'm actually looking out to 2046 right now for projections on a variety of different things. The capital improvement projects we're going to have to do with the runways and everything else. I don't have all those blanks filled in by any means. But that's how far I start designing out. The actual real budget is more like about 5 years out, and this is what I put into Bryce in the city, and say this is what I'm seeing. It's also where I look at developing rates and stuff like that, and part of that also is risk management. Do we want to get into this type of business? What are the checks and balances there? Fuel is one of those things that we look at, or I look at, and have at every airport I've been at. So, yeah, that can be really expensive, and part of the way you do that is first off, you look for a grant, which you can't get a grant for the fuel farm, at least not from the FAA. You can, but we're not going to be able to get one. Okay. So then you look at other avenues of grant money and whatnot. For instance, is there a way that whenever we pull the underground fuel tanks out, is there grant money available in an environmental aspect that'll help us out with that? I don't know. But those are things that we need to look at. And as we go forward, is being in the fuel business too risky for the city? Maybe so, maybe no. And that's part of what I have to deal with the checks and balances. I haven't made a decision on that yet, so I can't share a decision with you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we'll continue on to for possible action in committee and commission's absence. So we have let's see, we have two openings or two people that have, no absences?
No, we have two.
Two absences?
Yeah, Andy's not here.
And this is the second, last time I was at the meeting that this gentleman, I'm not really sure I don't even know who he is.
Gary Berger.
Gary Berger, he wasn't here last time
No,
either.
he was absent as well.
No. And I texted him.
Get a hall pass? Oh, okay.
probably move that we excuse Andy.
Andy.
He just had the one time that he hasn't called in, and then I would move maybe that. What do we do for somebody that's been absent twice without any kind of excuse, or has he called in?
Gary called in today, and then the last meeting he did not call in. I think he just had a doctor's appointment or something.
Okay.
I can't recall, but he had called in today with a family illness. So
Then I would move that we give them another shot.
I second that.
If that's a motion, motion passes.
Okay.
So then now we're moving on to public comment, and just to remind you all, you have, we just like to limit it or keep it limited to 5 minutes. Certainly, we're here at a, pretty frustrating time, and I'd like to just share with you all some of my frustration is, to use an analogy, I remember a friend of mine told me, is, you have a maid and you just kind of show up at the house and the house is always clean. And it's always amazing how your windows just always remain like they're clean, they're always clear. And you assume that nothing's being done my point is, you assume that nothing's being done, nothing's being commented on, or nothing's being negotiated. But you'll be surprised on how much effort, on a lot of people's part is to try and get these hangars and get this resolved. Unfortunately, was it 3 were submitted? 3 proposals were submitted. And then the city has just chosen to essentially no longer pursue any proposals, and which kind of was a complete change of direction after, countless hours of trying to organize, negotiate, and talk. And so I just want to set that up so that people are kind of have an idea when they come up to public comment that a lot has been done and a lot has been said. Unfortunately, where we are now is it's been completely, as far as the city's no longer accepting proposals from the individual people who have interest in hangars or who want to extend their leases. But with that being said, we'll open up for public comment if anybody wants to speak. Rob?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think, Matt, you've almost cut to the chase a little bit, and I think there needs to be a little bit of history, because I believe at least one or two people from the mayor's here, and a couple of the new city council people are here, and they kind of need to understand what's been happening. I've been a hangar owner out there for 7 years. I've been working to try to get the ground leases renewed for just about that long, and people were doing it before me, by the way. And what happened was we thought something positive was going to start about a year ago, because the airport hired a consultant, a guy named Kurt Castagna. And he actually met with me, met with some of the other people, and he specifically told us, this is no problem. We can have the ground leases renewed in a month or two, because it's a very simple process. We want to put sprinklers in, we want to do smoke alarms. I made a proposal that included every single one that they wanted. The only thing that was open is how much is the ground lease going to increase, which is apparently the big sticking point. And at the same time, I was also informed that the city had made a decision that they didn't want to own the hangars. Now, if that's true, this is like a Hobson's choice. There is no answer. Yet, this is not Willie's fault, because he's brand new. He had to write an email to all of us saying, everything's off the table. There's not going to be any discussion, and maybe we'll let you renew your leases after they're expired. Now, what that forces me to do, because what I did, just so you all understand, is there's actually there's several, I think there's 11 ground leases at the airport. The first one up is what's generally called the Nuno ground leases. Well, I own all 28 of those, okay? I also own 6 of the hangars myself. And I did that in part because I want to try to help the city get through this and get done, because cities don't really want to own hangars. They really don't. Christ, we've gone from 1 employee at the city to 4 since all of these problems have started. And before that, we had 1 employee out there. And now we have 4. And there's a real problem there, I mean, to put it mildly. And to the extent that this has got to be revenue neutral, which I do understand and I do agree with, that is not the hangar owners' problems. Will we pay our fair share? Absolutely. But to not negotiate, which is what's happened here, is absurd. I mean, to put it bluntly, you have no money. I've spent hundreds of hours on this thing in the last years. And this should have occurred a long time ago. I intentionally bought the Nuno leases about 2 years ago just so I could sell them to everybody, especially anybody in Boulder City that owns the hangar above there. Because the way the ground leases work, the city owns all the land at the airport. The ground leases are owned by the ground lease tenant. The hangars are owned by the person above that. And that's why everybody on their hangars pays personal property taxes. They are not real property. And one of the things I'm going to be forced to do, and I'm going to start in January, I'm going to start dismantling my hangars. And I own 6 of them. And I really, really don't want to do that. But if I don't have a choice, I'm not giving them to the city in June, because the way the lease reads, if they're there at the end of the lease, they get them without paying for them, not a cent, because that's the way the lease reads. But I am allowed to remove my personal property before the end of the lease. I actually went out of my way to have one of the premier engineering firms in the state of Nevada, Loxa Engineering, do an analysis on whether or not they were temporary buildings or they were permanent buildings. They're temporary. They can be dismantled, they can be removed. And that's what I'm going to do, as much as I don't want to. And it will really screw up the airport. Because, by the way, the 6 of my hangars aren't just one building. They're in like 4 different buildings. So there'll be holes all over the place. And I really, really don't want to do this. But if I'm not given a choice, it is what I'm going to do, even though I'm kind of cutting off my nose despite my face. But I'm not giving the hangars to the city. That is not going to happen. Now let's turn to a couple of other things for a minute. Okay, I want to make sure I'm understanding all of these issues. First of all, I think that, I don't want to get upset with Willie because he's brand new. It's not fair to him at all. The history exists. Okay, but at the same time, I did meet with Kirk Costanza over a year ago, and he said, no problem, we'll get this done in a month or 2. And now we get the memo from you saying, forget it, everything's off the table. We'll consider talking to you guys after your lease is up. I can't have that happen. They'll be gone. I mean, I'm going to start, by the way, I'm just going to start taking doors off in January, right now. So then I'm going to dismantle them over the next several months, because I've already got an opinion from an engineer that it's possible. I really, really don't want to do this. But if we don't have a choice, we don't have a choice. If you guys want to go to court and try to stop me, fine. But I'm going to do it. All right. I'll let somebody else talk now.
I'll give you my 5 minutes.
Yeah, if you want to keep talking, you got my 5.
I love Boulder City.
Let's just limit it to 5 minutes. Thanks. We understand. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Raina. Welcome to Boulder City. I'm from the Northwest too, so welcome. It's much better weather down here. There's 3 things that I think you should focus on. We don't need a lounge or a restaurant right now. We need the fuel fixed. The fuel farm has been inoperable, and apparently BFE has been not allowed to deliver fuel to the East Hangars anymore. That needs to change. I need to have the fuel delivered to me because I have a fuel-injected engine that vapor locks if I have to start it twice. You need to finalize the renewal of the leases. Rob spoke to that. Rob, please give me the name of your engineer. And this fire sprinkler requirement that I heard of, I understand is that there's some sort of demand that we retrofit fire sprinklers in our hangars, and that doesn't need to happen. We've insured our hangars and we've insured our airplanes. The other thing is I'm an internet geek. I actually Googled you, Mr. Williamson, and found an article from the Columbian. The title is Mismanagement at Pearson Airport Cost the City at least $63,000 over the last decade. It talks about the audit was conducted by the city's auditor and found that the Pearson Airport operations did not comply with applicable laws, regulations, and its own policies. The audit was ordered by city leadership following the resignation of former Pearson Airport manager Willie Williamson, who left his post after a decade in July. The document specifically examines the time period under Williamson's tenure. You might want to address that. Thank you.
Thank you. Just so that we have, I'm all about the free flow of information so that we're all informed. And when a comment was made, and I believe it was, I forgot, I just saw Mr. Williams is shaking his head about the first thing that was said. Was it fire sprinklers? Okay, for one, was the fire sprinklers it's hard to say now because that was along as we were going down that road of negotiation, and all of a sudden, so it's hard to say where we are because we haven't really seen a whole lot of that we can rely on what was been said. But go ahead, Kurt.
Well, the city expense hired the consultants, Aeroplex and Kurt Castagna, and it, in meetings with them, and they did present, and there's plenty of information that they presented in the minutes from the last meeting they presented, and they were definitely in favor of creating new leases, as Rob mentions, but they also were they kind of shut down the whole thing on the fire. That whole fire sprinkler thing was kind of under the previous manager. So I'm not sure if that's on the table here, but under what Castagna and his group were recommending, the fire sprinklers were off the table, and there was no, there's just no way to justify that either on the city's part or on our part. So I don't know whether the city wants to bring that up again is another issue, but right now that's kind of off the table from my understanding, or it was.
So, okay, a couple things. The sprinkler issue is no longer there. We're going through, we're verifying that we have firewalls in the hangars and stuff like that, which is the mitigation that's required. So we're not looking at any sprinkler systems or anything like that from my understanding. A couple other things, if I may respond.
Yeah, feel free.
Yeah. So fuel coming from BFE, we have not stopped BFE from delivering fuel. We just haven't. So,
from my reading of that letter, BFE doesn't feel. I think that was their choice. If I read their letter correctly, they've chosen not to bring fuel down to the other end of the airport because of their ongoing arguments with the city. But I think that's their choice. At least that's how I read it.
That is correct. And there are two FBOs that dispense fuel at the airport. There's BFE and then there's BCAS, which also provides avgas. So avgas is available down there for you. Sprinklers. And the other thing that I'll just go on record with, yes, they wrote a pretty good article about me. And it takes a little bit more time to explain the whole issue than we have here tonight. But if anybody would like to come and talk to me about what happened up there and, the accurate information, I'm willing to provide that to anybody. So, and there we have. The other thing that was brought up, if I can continue, is the land lease issues. That's not on the agenda because this really isn't the format for that, the forum for that. And the reason is because the AAC, they can provide advisory stuff to us and whatnot, but that's really not what's in here. The other thing is that for the advisory committee to provide a recommendation on anything, at this point it's an incredibly biased playing field up there. So, that's really not good either. So if we had some other people that weren't hangar owners up there, that would be a better situation.
Can
And if anybody in here wants to talk to me about where we're at with all this stuff, again, this is one of those things that I'm more than willing to talk to anybody on face to face with and tell you where we're at and how we're going about it. And the only other thing I'll say about that is, I guess there's nothing else to say other than come by the office or give me a call.
When? Because this is up in June, okay? In June, the hangars are...
Tomorrow.
Hey, Rob.
Okay.
Can I say something really quick about that? First of all, if we were all here, only 2 of us are hangar owners up here. The rest are not. The other thing is, I've lost my train of thought on it. But anyway, go ahead.
So the other would be, making the reference bias opinion up here, I would refer to, that's why the city paid all the money to bring the other company in and do other studies. So, does the city/airport doesn't want to take our advice because it's bias, doesn't want to take the other study that was done just because it doesn't line up with what the city. So that's what I'd like to comment on.
Okay, I remember what I needed to say. Yes, we agree that it's not on the agenda. But one of the reasons when we went through with the previous mayor and he came up with this resolution, signed it, that was the result of a meeting that some of the members of the AAC had with the mayor when he was wanting to abolish the AAC. And we convinced him that the AAC needed to stick around mainly so that people would have a public forum so they could come and have their voices heard. And here we are at the public comment where they can, at least from our understanding, that the public can say what they want at this point. And so we encourage that. I mean, because that was kind of one of the main reasons we wanted to keep the AAC in force, was so that they could do so.
No, I'm not saying that they can't come up and talk about stuff. They can bring anything up. I'm saying that I didn't put that in there because this is not what I feel is an appropriate role for the AAC. I feel a more appropriate role may be a special committee or something like that. I believe there was a hangar committee that was convened at one point. I haven't got any information from that committee.
So just for clarification, so that I understand correctly, is essentially that we're just not supposed to pass, that we can't pass a resolution. And so what we wanted is but this is a great forum for people. Rarely do we get to share ideas where we're all together. And so that's therefore in public comment, please do. If you have an issue, please bring it up, considering this issue. Go ahead if you want to add to.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have any problem with Rob coming up and talking about stuff or Raina or anybody else. I was just telling you why I didn't put it on the thing. The other thing that I'll point out, Marissa just handed this to me because she's been here longer than me. The consultant gave 3 options. 1 was reversion, 2 was a master lease agreement, and 3 was to have a managing company oversee all the hangars. So those were the 3 options. And I do recall reading that whenever I read Kurt's report.
I think everybody here will tell you, we've all been here, they spent 99% of their time on the lease renewals. That's what they wanted to do. They were very clear about that. They even went so far as it was on the city's website, the proposals be sent in. That's what he presented here to us. We had private meetings with him where he presented that. There was zero talk of reversion other than it was an option. There was zero. And I don't think there's a soul in this room that would disagree with what I'm saying. And so that's, anyway, we probably should just continue with the public comment.
Now, to jump to Willie's defense here on this, I read that article of the $63,000, and the article wrote, or the way I understood the article is that's through 10 years. And if you think about $63,000 of running an airport, that means that's $6,000 a year. That's chump change.
No, there was more than that in the article. I didn't read the whole article.
Well, let's let whoever wants to visit with Willie about that, please.
Yeah,
do.
that's fine. But my point is and I'm not trying to argue against the article or anything like that. It's just that, in the bigger scheme of things of what an airport cost and all that, and I have no idea of the validity or if it was true or factual or all that. I just thought the numbers were, I thought, okay, that's really not that big of a number. But maybe I misunderstood it, and I certainly can be, I've been wrong before. Go ahead. Who's next? Go ahead, sir. All right.
Mark Delaney with the Boulder City Condominium Owners Association. We have a group of hangars down there, about 18. Anyway, I just want to just emphasize what everybody's been saying about the need for a hangar proposal or renewing the hangar leases. Having the city, go all the way to where Kurt talked about, and we're all making proposals, and we've all been down that line. We're all working together to do that, and then all of a sudden we get, no, that's off the table. And then I just heard tonight that the city decided to pull it. Well, see, to me, that's where the Airport Advisory Committee comes in. Is that if the city council has questions about what's going on at the airport, you would think they would call on the Airport Advisory Committee and go, hey, give us an input. What's happening? What do you think? How do you feel? I don't know if that happened or not, but evidently the advice wasn't taken. So who, if you can answer this, who provided the city with information that the consultant was wrong, the Airport Advisory Committee was wrong, everything that they'd done to that point was wrong, and we're going down a different path? How did we get to that point? I think we'd all like to know that. And just to emphasize again, how much all these folks here tonight, many of them are hangar owners, and it's an investment. We have, as you know, Willie, people invest in their airplanes, they're not cheap, invest in their hangars, and they're not cheap. And we do this because this is part of our relaxation. We come to the airport to enjoy our hobby, enjoy the airport community like you want to do. And for the last 20 years, it's been a hassle, one thing after the other. And I just want to fly my plane. I want to go to my hangar, drink a beer, have a good time, and that's all and that's what we want to do. And in that order. We fly, we eat, we have a beer. Okay. And one other thing I just wanted to kind of mention as we're talking about the fuel farm today, and we mentioned there was a few more expenses in it than we kind of thought. We're just barely eking by. You take 150 hangars down there, and in 30 years, when they're 30-year hangars, you're going to wish you had people maintaining those as opposed to you maintaining them. And when that door doesn't open, and it's about halfway open, who's going to come out there and stay with it all night? And how long is it going to take to get fixed? I can call up a door company. It's going to cost me a little money, but I'll have it done in that day. If the city has to come do it, it's probably not going to be that day. It's probably going to be a week or so. So it's another, if we're having problems with the fuel farm, add 150 hangars to that and see where we are. Thank you.
My name is James Embro, and I am a hangar owner. I own 2 hangars down there. I'm relatively new to the city, but more importantly, I'm speaking to you as a Boulder City resident. The airport is an amenity to this community, absolutely guaranteed, and maintained properly. It's a pretty part of this community in a lot of people's eyes. If there's dots and dashes of those hangars removed as a result of an indecision of the city and not a willingness to work with the people who have invested in this community, it's going to significantly degrade this community. In addition to that, Each and everybody that's hired by this city is paid for through tax dollars. You have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers to see to it that what the decisions you make with your discretionary budgets, again, can break even, fine, but you got to know that. And what I'm hearing, no firsthand knowledge about any of the budgets, but if we can't get a fuel pump fixed in a period of 2 years, and we don't know we're making money on fuel, as a taxpayer and as a Boulder City resident, what are we doing in the fuel business? Because again, you spoke to this needs to be run like a business. Well, let's run it like a business. Let's truly know what these expenditures are, and when you go fix a pump, or you put a new hose on that pump, or you have to get the pump calibrated, know the cost of it. Note a book and keep a running budget, a ledger. And in this day and time, that's not too much to ask because we got computers that can do all that and can itemize these budgets. So again, I would encourage you to really look at one, we don't need dots and dashes in those continuous streams of hangers down there. But secondarily, where's the proof that taking those back and running them by the city is going to be any profit to me as a taxpayer in this city, or any break even? I mean, you got to know if that's really going to work, because that's a no turn back deal. And if you talk about the cost associated with the litigation for a mismanaged or wrong decision along those lines, it's huge. And it's not a threat. I don't say it in that manner. I just say that I know what's coming. And as a taxpayer, I don't want to pay those endless fees. I don't want to have my taxes raised. I don't want to have to do that. I mean, I'm enjoying doing that, and I think everybody in here would agree. We're willing to pay more money for the ground leases, in recognizing that, okay, marketability, okay, but let's get on a reasonable discussion about that. Let's do some cost comparisons, and let's come up with a real number that makes sense for this city to then come and approach a group like this and say, okay, well, if Gary doesn't want to show up or Andrew doesn't want to show up, fine. But if at least 70% of us show up to discuss this, let's make a decision that makes sense for this city as a taxpayer. Now, as a hangar owner, I don't want to have to get the name of that engineer, but I'm not going to re-engineer stuff, even though so again, we don't need that. The city doesn't need that. And Will, you're just coming on board. You don't need that. I mean, you got to get your feet wet for all kinds of different things that are going on around here, and it'll take a year or more. But to just come in here and then the city make some decision that is, we've discussed this, and by the way, they had a fiduciary responsibility to rely on those people they hired to give them those three options. And if they chose to just discount those three options, like the gentleman before me, who made that decision? And on what information was that decision made? Because if it's because now the city's going to profit by those hangars, or quote break even, but yet still manage them and see that there's some good to this city as me as a taxpayer, well then I want to know it. Full transparency, 100%. And I do disagree with the idea that we can't come to a meeting like this in a community of all concerned people, because you're not going to get people that live over on the other side of town that have nothing to do with an airport to come up here and talk to you about airport affairs. There'll be very, very, very few people if you polled all 15,000 people around here and tried to get them to come in here and help us make this decision. You're looking at the people that are going to help make this decision, and or the lawyers that come behind them if the wrong decision's made relative to the wrong information for all the right reasons. So I encourage you, please, new on board, huge task, I realize that. And I'm impressed with the accolades for you come here, and I realize it that you got vested years and years and years of your life, but realize that so do these people too. And in that, they're counting on you and counting on Marissa and others alike to make those proper decisions with those budgets and give guidance to the city council that makes these all-in decisions, and realize the ramifications of that. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who would like to speak? Go ahead.
Joel Smith, and just for the record, I live right across the street from the Henderson Airport. When I first came to Vegas, I launched my flight school at the North Las Vegas Airport. It was contentious, tough, students were failing. The tower was tough to work with. Very hard environment for a brand new pilot to get in that seat and be successful in a short economical period of time. So I went across the street from my house. I'm on the final approach for the runway at the Henderson Airport. That's where I live. I moved my flight school over there. Same thing happened within 6 months. I went back to North Las Vegas, but every week I was flying to Boulder City, doing takeoff and landings. So 4 years ago, I made the decision to drive over 50 miles a day to come up here to run my flight school. And I gotta tell you, I'm emotional about it because there's people that come to me that tell me on a regular basis, I would never fly anywhere else to get my license at the Boulder Airport once I've been here. And James is a personal friend of mine, and I will tell you, there are a lot of people here just as emotional because this airport's important. There's great pilots coming out of here, and they're going on to do amazing things. We soloed a 17-year-old last month. I'll give you a whole list of them. But they can do it because they're at the Boulder Airport. And all these little things that we can't fix, that there's all these reasons. Why can't someone stop and look at what, just like James said, it's a pinnacle part of the community, and focus on that and say, what's working? Don't focus on what's not working per se to get in the way of doing it. Just come with a solution and say, there are the solutions and let's pick one of those. Because time's running out. And I just don't understand. I told you personally already, Willie, I appreciate the time you spent with me. And I will just tell you, if anything, if you need some breathing room or you want to lower the temperament of what's going on, take that very first expiration date of those leases and move them to the next one. At least do that. At least get an extension initially to the next expiration date to give us a little bit of room. Because if I lose my hangar, it's not a threat. I don't have another choice. If I lose my hangar down there, I saved up all my life to do it. I can't keep my flight school at that airport. I mean, I'm going to have to figure something out or go find one, but there's no hangar space. You can't rent a hangar down there right now. It's valuable. And the other piece to this is I'm in the air most every day. Most every day. I know the safety concerns. We've been out there doing it. To me, there's two things here. I personally have met transient pilots that come through here that count on the fact that they can land at this airport because they don't want to go to a controlled airport like Henderson or North Las Vegas to get fuel. They're transient. They stop. They want to get fuel. And that fuel pump is broken on a regular basis. I'm not kicking on you, Marissa. I just want you to know I have documented it 5 times this week, 2 times during the day it hadn't worked, and 3 times at night, and that's the one that concerns me because a transient pilot is flying from, we'll call it, the last one I met was Lake Powell, going on his way to LA, landed at Boulder City, wanted to get fuel. The fuel pump was broken. It's 9 o'clock at night. He goes over to knock on the door at the building for BCA to give him fuel. There's no fuel truck. There's no one there to go pump gas. It happens during the day as well. But you're talking about people that are transient through here, and that's just as important also. So, once again, I drive over 50 miles a day to do this for a reason, and it's because this is the place to be. I know it, and I know that this is the safest environment to have a flight school. And I know that these pilots that are coming out of here, they're doing it right because we have it here. And I want to see that stay here. And I want to be a part of that because that's what we do. Thanks.
I'm Roger Williamson, and I really don't have any great speech to say. I just have a question. When the city decided that they were no longer going to consider renewing leases, didn't want to talk about it, did they also let the FAA know that they were no longer interested in any additional federal funds. It would seem to me that if the city runs off half of the people who poured their money into this airport, they wouldn't want any federal funds any further. They stole a few $1 million right off the bat. And maybe somebody should let the FAA know there would be no reason for any other request for federal funds here. And so my only question is, did anybody, when they notified the pilots groups that there would be no further consideration about lease extensions, did they let the FAA know that they did not want any federal funding? That's my only question.
Go ahead, sir.
Hi, I'm Dick Carr, local resident, own 2 hangars, and I was on the, I don't know what we call the committee, but the ground lease extension committee, and I believe Marissa knows more about the foundation of it, but I was one of the 6 or 8 people that were selected to go to the meetings and come up with some hangar ground lease solutions and discussions. And all of a sudden, I think our last meeting was June, roughly, and then nothing happened since. That's new news to me that the city council has decided not to even discuss hangar leases after ground leases after all the work that we did. We did a lot of work. We met with the Aeroplex committee and Marissa and all the hangar people. And I guess one of my questions is that are we still going to meet and continue on with our discussions and try to help this situation?
Yeah, I have no problems meeting with you guys. I'd like to do that, find out what you've done.
Yeah, I thought we did a lot, and the last indication I got from the Aeroplex group that y'all hired for consulting was that they'd recommend that the city extend the ground lease, and we were supposed to submit on a hangar group by group basis suggested leases. I believe Nuno Hangars being the first. And I'm curious as to who in the city council or what decided to shut the door.
The door hasn't been shut yet.
Okay.
We're still looking at all aspects of this, where we can go and what we can do, and the financial impacts to everybody. So we're still going through that, and the city council has not reviewed the information yet. So that's going to be happening shortly.
I think it's a pressing airport problem that a lot of us are coming up with renewal times, and we have to plan ahead because it'll take a while to get the contractors to come out and disassemble our hangars, which I'm considering also. I think it's an important thing, and I know how expensive it is to maintain and upgrade hangars. I just serviced 2 hangar doors at the tune of $5,000 and $7,000, and I can just see the city budget going to heck when these 30-year-old hangars come up for that kind of maintenance and after they take it over. And I think that's something that, including electrical and whatnot, that private owners are willing to bite the bullet and do because we love flying. And that's all.
Thank you. Bill?
Afternoon, folks. It's Bill Reed, Taxiway 1, number 22, and I rent a hangar for the last 15 years at a considerable expense to our family. I have quite a bit of inventory in my building that is probably conservatively $120,000, $150,000. Okay? Now, that being said, I have an investment in this community airport right over here. I buy fuel here, I buy lunch here, I buy other goods and deals and everything else. Now, when I came on this airport approximately 17, 18 years ago, we had a fuel supplier. His name is Wayne Yulberg, and it was Aztec Aviation Fuel Services out of Foxfield, California. But he had a house right up here in Henderson next to the dam. Now, he had 2 or 3 employees that would fly around to all of the stations that he sold fuel at to make sure his machinery was working. And I would see him every 2-3 weeks come up here to fix a pump or change a hose or whatever they had to do. They had 2 airplanes. I think they had a Moon and a 206. Now, arguably, Wayne sold his fuel enterprise to Bob Fonstock. And Bob Fonstock continued to keep the stuff going for quite a while. Now the city taking this thing over and the stuff the fuel pump's not working is a real detriment to aviation and the safety. If you think that it's safe to fly 500 or 600 miles of land here and find out you got no fuel, or you're going to get fuel so that you can go on to your destination, you better keep it in mind and just put it in the real world. There's people that come from all over the countryside just to stop here to get fuel. And, without that advantage, with that pump broke down, this guy might take off in the middle of the night trying to make LA, and he might crash in the desert out in Barstow. You want to put that on your resume? All right. Good luck, folks.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
How you doing, guys? Mike Caruso. I'm probably the newest guy here. So my story is I was in flight school here at AirXL a little over 15 years ago. I don't know if anybody remembers those guys, but I lived in Summerlin at the time, and this was the only non-towered airport in the area. And to make flight school as accommodating as possible, this was the place to be. Consequently, fell in love with Boulder City, right? So a few years later, wife and I had a kid. And not only did we come here, but we brought our business here, which brings tax dollars and so on. So in addition to the community that you get by being a hangar owner here, it's really what brought us to this town. It's quite frankly the only reason that we're here. Now, unfortunately, I bought one of these new hangars in August, so I stand to take a big hit. That was, I don't know if it was the smartest thing I've ever done, but at the time, with advice from some good people, it looked like it was going to go well, and that was the consensus when I bought it. So it's very painful to me, and also having to explain to my wife what could possibly go down. But I stress as much as possible, please somehow get this back to the negotiating table. Let us all weigh in. There's got to be a breakover point for both the city, for it to make sense, and for the owners of the hangars to make sense. Thank you for your time, guys.
Hi, I'm Ray Matthews, and I'm a hangar owner as well. There's a saying most of the time when you're looking into any of these issues, if you just follow the money. You've heard people say that, follow the money. And this one has the feeling to me that somebody had this genius idea that, you know what, guys, you know what we could do? We're not getting that much a month on these leases, But if we took those hangars and then rented them back to them, I'll bet you we could triple that amount. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong.
It's Brock Armentrout's memo.
This is all this is about. It's a money grab by the city. And I also feel personally violated. Have you ever had somebody break into your car and steal stuff out of it? You feel like you've been violated, almost like you've been raped or something, you know?
Sir.
And I don't know how that feels.
Sir,
but
I believe you have to address the
okay, if you want me to look this way, that's fine. And all I'm saying is this idea, this revision, whatever you call it, I know it's in the leases. I have a lease in Montana on another hangar that I went and checked, and it's not in there. It never occurred to me to look at the lease to see that the property could just be taken away from you, that you purchased without any notion of that happening. I think that's wrong. I think that's morally wrong, and I think the city council that makes this decision needs to do some soul searching on that issue. We pay good money for those hangars, and to have them just confiscated, just like somebody breaking into your car and stealing your laptop out of the back seat. I don't see it any differently. So, and I think the city is way wrong if they think everybody's talked about it here. These hangars are old. I've had to replace hangar door already. I mean, the money to keep these hangars up is not being calculated in this get-rich scheme of we can get more money renting them than we can with the ground lease. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi guys, my name's Chad Hesterman. I'm a longtime Boulder City resident. I own one very modest hangar on Taxiway 4. I built my own airplane, experimental RV-7, also Southwest pilot. And I also worked was a fast team, currently a fast team representative for the FAA, and I was an AAC member probably about 10 years ago. So I remember when this discussion all started, trying to work out what looked back then so far in the future, working out some future plans for what we're going to do with these hangars. And now what looked like so far out in the future is in 6 months. The impact to the airport has been pretty severe. You don't know it, but friends of mine are leaving. They've gone to Sandy Valley. They've gone to Pahrump. And as soon as one goes to Pahrump, said, wow, we don't have to deal with any of this over here. Then the next two go to Pahrump. So we're already losing users of the airport. It's already happened. And these are people that were going to contribute. These are people that were going to be formation pilots for the Veterans Formation Club that flies over our 4th of July and our Memorial Day and our Veterans Day. So I'm just it's puzzling to me who's driving the train on this. Is it the city manager? Is it the city attorney? And I don't understand. And I don't know how much you actually play into this decision. Are these things that are discussed here at City Hall, and are you even included in the recommendation, or has the decision really already been made? And as City Council works for me, and if I need to put a full court press on City Council to educate them so that they can educate city staff, I'm willing to do that. But I don't know the processes and what's really going on and why the sudden turn of events. So if the fuel farm's been anything, it should be the canary in the coal mine. And do we really want to get in the hangar leasing business? I've got a very old hangar, one of the oldest, but leasing these hangars back to the tenants will probably make it prohibitively expensive for a lot of the current people that are here. So anyway, I just wanted to mention those things, and I hope that you do have an influence, because I do believe that your heart's in the right spot. I just don't know if it's going to be enough with the current city staff. Thanks, Willie.
Anyone else? Rich?
Hi, my name's Rich Moynihan. I'm a Boulder City resident. I'm a hangar owner, airplane owner, president of the Boulder City Airport Association, and a past member of the AAC committee. I apologize in advance if I'm repetitive, but I just walked in the door. We just landed from Oklahoma City, trip scheduled before I knew about this. So just got here and luckily made public comment. So, like I say, I apologize if I'm repetitive. We've been working on hangar lease extensions on and off since 2005. And over the last year or so, since they hired the consultant, we were encouraged because we were told by him, a number of us were told by him, that the city didn't really want to be in the hangar leasing business. So we were really encouraged, and then all of a sudden we find out that, well, maybe they want to be in it. I've written letters to airport manager, city manager, copied city council. And of course, city council is going to be the one that makes the ultimate decision, because if they hear this and then give a little direction, hopefully it'll go that way. The main part of my letter was the expenses. I don't think the city's not going to be the cash cow that maybe the city thinks it is, if they're thinking that way. You know, they're going to have to increase staff. They're going to have to pay utilities. I realize they're going to get some of this back in the rent, but they're going to have to take care of utilities. They're going to have to take care of repairs, maintenance, insurance. Just this last week, in our group of 16 hangars, I replaced 3 hangar lights and 5 light bulbs and fixed an electrical short where 4 of the hangars on the south side didn't have any power. And I think it's going to be hard to get that kind of stuff done. I know the door motors for the bifold doors, they go out occasionally, not all the time, but a motor itself is $2,000. So I think with the expenses for all those things, compare them with an increase in the ground lease, and, you know, it might be a wash, it might not, but it's going to be real close. And if it's real close, why would the city want to take care of 30-year-old hangars, 140 of them? You know, we don't mind taking care of our own hangar, so it's a little bit different. But all of a sudden, when you got the repairs on 140 hangars, that's going to be a lot of work. As far as the lease, and I'm not sure how this works out, but there's kind of been some precedents. They already extended the Port-a-Ports a lease extension of 10 years. So, I mean, if they did it for them, why don't they do it for us? We should get 10 years. And I know the other 2 were commercial leases, but years ago they extended, I believe, you know, don't quote me on this, but I could be wrong, the BFE lease and also a Papillon lease long before they were going to expire. So there's some precedents. Even though those are commercial, it's still at the airport. The other thing is, as I said in my letters, that you know, a lot of people interpret personal property. We know we own the hangars. There are buildings. We've been paying personal property tax on them for years. And the city, that's another thing the city's going to lose. They get a portion of that personal property tax back. And a lot of people interpret in their lease agreement removing their personal property prior to the end of the lease as far as removing the hangar itself. And supposedly even the AOPA legal department says that is probably true. It's your personal property. You can do what you want. Now, we're not all going to go out there and remove our hangars because we need a place to put them. But some people will. And if all of a sudden there's holes where they cut down the building and removed them, all of a sudden the city doesn't have 140 hangars to rent. They have whatever, 100 or 90 or 80 is that going to be as profitable? Probably not. I would think a good increase in the ground lease and getting the lease agreement itself, a good lease agreement that makes the city happy and that the hangar owners can live with is probably the best way to go. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Julie Morris, one of the hangar owners as well. Taxiway 3-1, I've had a conversation with you. Can you hear me okay? I'm sorry. I just wanted to let you guys know I got 3 people at AOPA working on our case. I've got the West regional manager that has supposedly worked with you before when you were at Pearson, Melissa McCaffrey. I've got Mike Ginter, who's the AOPA VP of Airports and State Advocacy. And then I forget this guy's title, but what he has dealt with in the past, his name is Adam Williams. He's dealt with airports that have wanted to go to current codes. I told him one of the thought processes had been take it up to the current fire codes, which you have said tonight that is off the table. But they're looking in it from a lot of different angles. They've dealt with this with airports all across the country, and the list of stuff that they said, well, we're going to go look at this. The list is a mile long of things that they're already going to go into and research. And I've got them a bunch of documents, including my lease, and they're in the research fashion right now, and they understand that time is critical. I'm in one of the Nuno hangars. That's one of the first ones coming up to expire. So I just wanted to give everybody in the room here, let them know that I do have AOPA working for us as well. So.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Moore. I'm a hangar owner. In fact, I own 3 hangars at the airport. One of them I bought back in 1998. It's one of the Nuno hangars. The other 2 are the condo hangars. Anyway, when I bought these hangars, I went through and had to redo the doors. This is for you guys with roll-up doors. By the way, one of the hangars I bought had a roll-up, well, 2 of them I bought had a roll-up door on it. And I had the guy come by, I says, why don't you come over and service this thing? I don't know anything about it. It's been up here since, when did they put those new hangars in? 02, something like that? 98. Was it 98? Was that long ago? Okay. Anyway, so I had the guy come over and service it, and he told me, he says, did you notice this? And I said, what are you talking about? And he says, well, this gear on the next to the motor that drives the chain that runs the door up and down, he says, that sucker's almost off. What? He says, yeah, they walk off, they come loose, they walk off. So you guys with the roll-up doors, check your sprockets, make sure they're tight, make sure they're not walking on you. Okay, that's been done. Anyway, they did a survey. The city called somebody in to do an analysis of the airport and what they were going to do. And one of the things they said, now this is years ago, this is 04, 05. Anyway, they made the comment at the time, hey, the city is losing a lot of money on these fuel depots by not pumping its own gas, because we had another contract. We had a private contractor in there who was selling gas, maintaining. And so the city was told, hey, you're losing $250,000 a year by not selling your own fuel. You guys making that much on our fuel? Anyway, I just wanted to point out $250,000, and the city says, well, apparently says, well, we need to take over the fuel pumps. And I think they're finding out now what the repercussions of that. I'm a snowbird. I have another hangar up in Washington State, and we have a fuel farm there. It's one pump. It's a pump. Anyway, and it's a 5,000 gallon tank. And over the years, it's changed hands several times, and this last year, they offered it to me. They said, hey, would you like to take over the fuel farm? I says, what's the catch? They says, well, the catch is there's a $90,000 bill due on the electronics went out on it. What? Says, yeah, that's got to be paid before anybody can take it over. The city doesn't want to take it over. The private contractors don't want to take it over. Again, for a $90,000 tax bill or a $90,000 bill to repair the electronics. So I can see where you guys are coming from when you talk about this fuel pump being a monstrosity. It is. Maybe you ought to find a contractor to come in and take it over for us. Let me see. I guess that's about it. I'm just curious. One thing, everybody was talking about the maintenance of these hangars. Yes, the maintenance is terrible on them. They're expensive to take care of. The doors have to be lubricated. I just have to replace all the rollers in my door. I think that was $5,000. And my question is this: if the city, if they lose all these hangars, what's the city going to do? Replace the hangars? Now, I've talked to a couple different companies about building hangars down in Arizona, and the cheapest I got, and this is just for the metal, was $76,000. Now that was for a 40 by 40 foot hangar. $76,000. That did not include the foundation. That did not include putting it up. That did not include the electrical, the water, anything else. Or the door, yeah, thank you. Yeah, or the door. Okay, I would like to stay at Boulder City. I love Boulder City. That's why I have 3 hangars there. But I'm like Rob Martin here. If they decide they're going to take our hangars, well, I'm a Nuno hangar. I'm going to move my hangar out. I don't know where in the hell I'm going to take it, but I'll take it someplace. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Simon Whiteley. I'm with one of the commercial operators here at the airport, Papillon. First, I'd like to just echo a couple of the sentiments of our previous speakers here this evening, in that, indeed, the Boulder Airport is a shining beacon in this community. And it is a huge, huge economic engine, not just for the operators on this airport, but for the city as a whole. Not just in the people we employ, but the ripple effect that those people who work in this airport, how that spills into the community and beyond. And consequently, I think it's a shining example that we all owe ourselves the responsibility and the wholehearted support for this airport to see it succeed going forward. And we all need to show our due diligence in making sure we operate it correctly. I now have a question, if I may pose it to you, gentlemen. How many seats are there on this Airport Advisory Committee?
There's 5.
5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. 2 missing. Okay. Well, I mentioned on the other reason I ask, I think I brought this up in the last public comment, that again, we see plenty of erudite composition of the committee, but yet none of them are still of the commercial operators, which I say we, Papillon, as being one of them. I think it would be fair that if the Airport Advisory Committee were to present fair and balanced input to the city, we should have a commercial operator on the committee. I'm not saying that I should be that person, but I've been to these committee meetings now for the last 6 years, and I'm really encouraged to see this is probably the biggest turnout I've seen of an evening, so well done, everybody. So I just bring that to mention that I think it should be. In fact, when I started coming to these meetings, I believe the chairman was actually an employee of the GCA, the airline, but he since subsequently moved, and I believe that the bylaws require to be a member of the committee meeting, you have to reside within the Boulder. And unfortunately, not many of us do. So I think that rule we could perhaps look at changing that. But anyway. Lastly, I'd just like perhaps a minor public announcement. In line with Willie's requirement that we operate safely at the airport, I'd like to mention that I've recently, in my office that overlooks our ramp, we've now recently installed 4 cameras, primarily aimed at overseeing the operation on the ramp of Papillons, but they look well beyond that too. And I've already had the very thankful ability to resolve two major issues that we've had recently, one on our ramp itself, but also one in airport operations, whereby we caught the incident on camera and we could review it and correlate that with the tape messages that the airport manager's office holds. And so if any of you, I put this open to the whole group, that if you have an event or an incident on the airport that you feel you might be on camera, then please contact me. I'm more than happy to share that data if it should help resolve a situation. So Simon Whiteley, I'm with Papillon, just call the number, they'll put you through to me. It archives for 60 days. So it's a good look back. The resolution is pretty good, and it's also, it works at night too. So by all means, use me as a resource if you should need so. Thank you.
If I could just comment on some of what you said is I believe at our last meeting I spoke with Mr. Bolt, and he said that you do not have to be a Boulder City citizen. And so the only thing that prevents the commercial operators from sitting on this board right now is simply the lack of volunteering for this. And that's what's prevented them. At the, I'm new. I only came here 6 months ago, and this is my second meeting. And at the time, there was we were all just hangar owners, just GA. So I think I'm not trying to be defensive. I actually would encourage the commercial operators because obviously, the GA is only part of this airport. And so if you want to volunteer, I'm sure this is going to be resolved with there might be some open seats. And so certainly, and that would go through the process of the city council would, submit your name or submit your employee's name. And then that way we can get some commercial operators on this. And I would be the first to support that. And I would hope that the city council would too. Anybody else?
My name is Eldridge Johnson. I taxiway 2, hangar 15. I'm not a resident of Boulder, but I love Boulder. I like the community at the airport. It just baffles me that the city or city council, I don't understand who decides this, but I think we should find out who does, because we have a lot of owners and a lot of people with who are stakeholders, who are also voters. So this city council, I don't know what their term of office is, but maybe we need to get together a political action committee, find out who they are, and vote them out. And we should pick our own candidate for the city council, and maybe they'll pay attention to the voters and to the community. I live in Henderson. If I could run, I would run for city council. Thank you.
Thanks, Aldrich. Anyone else? Okay, so no volunteers, so we'll close public comment and we'll move to any comments on the...
I just have one. I just want to thank everybody who showed up and for all of your comments. I know it's been kind of long, but it's been great to hear from everybody. And go ahead.
I want to ask, there were a number of questions posed in the comment session that really need answers. And so how would we go forward with that in order to, if we could get a tape of this, if it's being recorded and or I can remember most of them recorded some on the phone, but there's some valid points brought up here that quite frankly, we deserve some answers. So we want to we want to do it in the right process, and we certainly aren't adversarial in the asking of the question, but we shouldn't be adversarial in the delivery of the answer. So whatever that format looks like, let's do it. And let's all, as people with a common interest, we're not going to all share the same exact opinion or approach, but we should stay together other than just showing up here one night on one, Monday evening or Tuesday evening or whatever, and then hoping that something gets done. Let's follow this stuff through based on the questions that were asked now and the answers we should get later to ask more questions.
All right, thank you.
Sir, to let you know, the meetings are all on the bcnv.org webpage, the city webpage. All the meetings are there, as well as on YouTube. You can find the meetings on YouTube at City of Boulder City, Nevada City Council channel.
Okay.
All the meetings are on there. So this one will be on there tomorrow in the afternoon.
Thank you so much.
And I guess I would encourage everyone to meet with Willie, meet with the mayor, meet with the councilman. They'll meet with you, and share what you're thinking, and hopefully we can have some influence there. Hopefully, hopefully they'll listen. Obviously, they will.
I mean, we started this off with maybe some reservation as to really the authority that your committee has relative to any decision or actions taken. And so that just puts some sort of preface to, right, if we don't kind of band together and we just all go one at a time, are we really truly representing the whole common good of the group versus just individual concerns? And I'd like to see it where, hey, I don't need to win every time, but I should be listened to, and then hopefully my neighbor wins.
I hate to do this, but we got to kind of corral this into this public comment, and this is the whole process of these discussions. And so we have to, stay within that rather than having people talking in the audience. And so I'm just going to try and, limit that. And I apologize but this is the format in which these meetings are. And Rob, we only have one public comment. Go ahead, one more.
I just want to point out that we do have a city council here, a lot of them, and they are really trying to understand this. It's really a staff that's done this. I gave you the names of the two guys that did, but that's not the point. We've got a new city council, and they're trying to work on this. So I think they've appreciated tonight, and that will help.
All right, thanks, Rob. Okay, any other comments? Go ahead. Well, go ahead.
Nothing.
Okay, well, one of the things that I noticed, Councilman Howard and Mayor McManus is here, and we sure appreciate them. They're obviously here, and I believe our new incoming council person is here. We appreciate you at least spending the time with us today and at least investigating what this issue is. Rather than bore you with my own personal story, and I will, just yesterday, there was this young kid, 17 years old. He, I was over at the fuel farm and he's pumping gas. And I was talking to him, and he's got his private pilot's license, and he's pumping gas the way, and that's how I got started. And now I was able to make a career out of it. My kid is now a sophomore in college. He just got his instrument rating. So, I think people who, and I'm not trying to address the mayor himself or the council person, but I don't think people on the outside of this airport realize just what a big club this is. And that this is a club like the Horsemen's Club, the dog park. This is just another aspect of Boulder City. And that, just like today, I was working in my hangar, and it is a kind of a pain to have your hangar door open. But that's what this is all about, is that we're a community, and that how important it is that we are all able to share this in this little this airport community. And I fear that, that creating these expenses, and we'll lose a lot of capital expense. I mean, let me just go back to this. In 2008, where we were devastated by the real estate losses, that devastated the whole southern Nevada. And this is essentially the same thing, because these are capital expenses that we have in these hangars. Once those capital is gone, how are we going to make that up? And these are huge expenses that we are all of a sudden, it's going to be erased overnight as soon as we lose it. And most of us, in fact, too many of us, will literally be put out of flying. And that's what I fear, is that because that's what this airport's here, is to promote general aviation, and that it'll be a shame that many of us, who are barely hanging on to just wanting to fly an airplane, will literally be put out of, will no longer be flying airplanes. But anyway, I'm sorry, I'll get off my soapbox.
If we're all done, then I would move to adjourn.
I second that.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
so happy to see a meeting go so long.